Do you still believe that Thanksgiving should be canceled?
Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so I think there I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views, but
So let's once again check back in on one of the many crazy communist candidates that Democrats have so wisely chosen to run in this cycle. And today's profile revolves around Francesca Hong, the likely Democrat nominee for governor of Wisconsin. You may have watched our prior video, but if you didn't, not only is she the generic crazy DSA pick, but she might actually be the most insane of them all, which is certainly saying a lot. But you're talking about a person here who openly stated that she wants to abolish the police. Yes, said those words verbatim. She wants to use National Guard violent military force against ICE agents, which is basically the actual definition of insurrection in this country. And now this week, she's coming under even more fire for some past comments in which she basically called to cancel every single major holiday you can think of. Thanksgiving, Christmas, the 4th of July. I know that Democrats, even back during the peak woke era, were trying to pretend as if this wasn't a thing. No, nobody's trying to cancel Thanksgiving. What are you even talking about? And then now one of their most prominent national candidates is indeed saying exactly that. Of course, these are some issues that are going to hold her down. She's suffering massively politically because of it. But even this week, when asked to respond to a lot of her past crazy comments, this person, this very definitely not CCP asset, by the way, is actually responding by doubling down. That is right. She's digging herself a deeper hole. And although it is very scary, the premise that this woman has any chance at being the governor of Wisconsin, the good news on the flip side is that, I mean, just look at this person, absolute crazy eyes. Crazy eyes over here is creating a resurgence of the once struggling Wisconsin GOP. Her campaign is not only collapsing in polls and prediction markets, but fundraising as well. To make a long story short, Democrat leadership, I should say, is so off-put by this woman, they don't want to dedicate any resources to her because they believe she is effectively done on arrival. But let's talk about why. Latest updates on this crazy person and individual. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, just so that we're clear about this, if you didn't watch our last video, here's a reminder. When we say that she wanted to abolish the police, we're not taking that out of context or strawmanning it. She said those words.
Abolishing policing is one segment of reforming and reevaluating our criminal justice system. Using those funds using the funds after we've eliminated the access to eliminating funds for the police needs to be put into rehabilitation services, mental health services for those in prison, making sure that we are looking at decreasing our prison populations.
Yeah, so let me actually correct the record there. She didn't just say she wants to abolish the police. She said that's only the first step. And you might sit there and ask, what is more radical than abolishing the police? Isn't that the most insane, crazy idea ever? To which I say, not in the Democrat Party. I don't know, go ask the Democrats why they're so obsessed and fixated with running and mainstreaming candidates and even having them winning primaries who take this position. It's kind of hard to sit there and pretend as if it's not a mainstream position when the candidates with this position keep on winning in your primaries, and Democrat leadership is so terrified of these people, they don't want to push back. The voters are choosing it. So what else are we expected to believe? By the way, we intentionally chose a different soundbite of her calling to abolish the police than we did in our first video on Francesca Hong for the very exact reason to prove to you, ladies and gentlemen, this is something she said multiple times. It didn't just slip out of her mouth. She was proudly dedicated to this position, and since she likely wants to use her minority status as a fellow Asian person, I will say a highly ironic thing to be saying as an Asian woman who likely also marched for the Stop Asian Hate movement. You mean the situation demonstrations across major cities were oftentimes disproportionately repeat black criminals, the type of people who you keep on advocating are not, menaces to society. They should be rehabilitated, given a second chance. Racist police or whatever are targeting them time and time again. Yes, we will call out Bobo liberals because they're the most obnoxious people ever. And you know what? I have the right to do that. Okay. So all of that in mind, again, totally not CCP asset here, though. It doesn't stop. Okay. We are just beginning, but, just to show you how we got to this position. Well, this week, what Francesca Hong is now coming under is a variety of tweets in which we found out that this miserable, crazy person, and that's exactly what she is, essentially hates every major holiday of the United States. Now, you might sit there and ask, if someone basically, in what's underlying all of this, she has a problem with America, she has a problem with American culture. Very interestingly, I'm not sure whether she would be saying these things about certain Korean holidays or Chinese holidays or Asian ones in general, But nonetheless, here we go. So Francesca Hong is coming under the biggest amount of fire for this November 2020 tweet saying the following: cancel Thanksgiving. Remember when we were told that, that's not a thing? Republicans, the MAGA, are exaggerating. Democrats aren't so woke that they want to cancel Thanksgiving. And then their presumptive nominee just literally said the words, and I quote, cancel Thanksgiving. Should have done this in 1621. If it takes a worldwide pandemic for us to realize that we should stop celebrating colonialism and the original super spreader event that killed indigenous folks, spelled with an X for some reason. I'm not exactly sure. Is that supposed to be some type of deconstructed spelling? I'm not sure. But anyways, folks and women, then so be it. But I'd point out, folks, that's not the only holiday she wants to cancel, okay? Which, running, and especially in a state like Wisconsin, you would think that should be immediately discrediting, but it actually goes on here. So here's another one. A bro who was working on our computer remotely changed the background theme to snow and Christmas trees. I feel slightly attacked because apparently in the United States of America, a country that celebrates Christmas, the fact that you might change a wallpaper to Christmas background around Christmas time, obviously, how dare she do that? How dare you do that? So at a certain point, when does hating everything about America just become that you basically hate America, right? But, we know the answer to that question. Here's another one, though. I miss working in a restaurant every day except on Valentine's Day. So you might sit there and think, okay, Christmas, that's a Christian holiday. Thanksgiving, that's a American, sort of underlying in many aspects, a Christian holiday as well. She says she does not enjoy fireworks in reference to the 4th of July, to which I again say, okay, so when China does fireworks, when Korea does fireworks, are those okay, Francesca, right? Do you go celebrate there on New Year's or only when they're in America, they become colonial holidays, right? I'm not exactly sure. But so we have all of that, but take a look at this one. This is where it gets even more ridiculous because you realize it's not even just anti-Americanism. It's that she's just like a miserable, bitter person, okay? Because guess what else she hates, ladies and gentlemen? Valentine's Day. That is right. I miss working in a restaurant every day except on Valentine's Day, as if we weren't invisible enough to those who don't recognize the emotional and physical labor of service work. The worst of humanity comes out from folks, quote, celebrating on another day where capitalism tells you how to show love. And I'm sure, by the way, that's not coming from a personally sensitive position on her behalf, right? Totally. It's ideological. It's not the fact that, again, she's just a bitter, miserable, lonely person. Okay, absolutely. But anyways, all of that in mind, so you look at this and they're just the easiest campaign ads ever. Not only does she want to abolish the police, she wants to cancel Thanksgiving. She wants to cancel Christmas. She wants to cancel the 4th of July. She wants to cancel Valentine's Day. But even earlier today, Francesca Hong, of course, goes on CNN and gets grilled on these very questions. And keep in mind, she's going to do the usual Democrat tactic of, oh, yeah, I might be a crazy communist, but my views have evolved over time. But notice how she doesn't even directly really push back on that actual position. Take a listen.
You talked about your past positions that he keeps highlighting and, obviously likely would continue to do so before November should you win. One thing that they brought up as well was a post from you in 2021 where you said Americans should cancel Thanksgiving, should have done this in 1621. The post has been deleted. Republicans have been highlighting it. Do you still believe that Thanksgiving should be canceled?
I'm a chef, and one of the first meals that I made that was for the community when I was 16 was a Thanksgiving meal. You know, I always think my hospitality background in owning a restaurant for 7, 8 years, that bringing folks around the table to share conversation and build community is always a good thing. But Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so I think there I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views, but views can evolve. And the position that I'm running for right now, and I think my background as a chef, will actually help me become a better governor that's able to bring more people to the table.
Francesca Hong, thank you for joining us. We hope to.
Yeah, so I don't know if you noticed this, folks, but she didn't actually answer the question at all remotely. Pretty interesting, too, how award-winning journalist, Caitlin Collins, who supposedly fair to both sides, just smiles and allows for that obvious political filibustering to take place, okay? It wasn't an elaborate weave at all, but breaking down that answer, all she basically said was this opening kind of spinning to make it sound like she doesn't want to cancel Thanksgiving because, hey, it's good for people to all sit down together. I used to be a chef. But then when she actually starts to talk about Thanksgiving, continues to double down on the idea that it's a highly problematic holiday to her. And let's keep in mind, too, folks, running on the idea of canceling Thanksgiving is a stupid, ridiculous, insane thing to be in all 50 states in this country. But it's also not Washington or California or New York or Massachusetts here where we're running. This is Wisconsin, ladies and gentlemen, a state that Trump won in 2024. And yes, while, of course, Wisconsin Republicans in statewide races have certainly struggled over the past several years, that does not really give a Democrat a free pass to say, oh, let's freaking abolish and cancel Thanksgiving, right? But I think it actually shows you the rather bubble that a lot of these DSA characters actually live in, right? Where they seem to believe that because they hang out on the campus or something of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, specifically in the political science or humanities department, that everybody thinks like this, everybody feels this exact same way. And surely in a purple state, I won't run into any problems with political positions like this is, probably not going to end all that well. But she seems to believe that, hey, people really are this far left. After Mamdani, there's some type of mandate. I'm going to keep doubling down on being insane, which is not the only candidate we've seen do this, but it's kind of a pattern that's starting to spring up, which frankly, I have to say is a massive miscalculation on behalf of these many leftists, despite the fact that in many ways things have gone crazy. This is still a normal country with normal people. Not everywhere is New York City. Not every candidate, by the way, is even Zoran Mamdani, because honestly, to his credit, okay, I don't give Mamdani credit for a lot of things, but the one wise choice he made was during that election season, what did he kind of do? Distance himself from a lot of the crazy things he said in the past and tried to sound like this moderate who's just focused on affordability. But a lot of these people taking the wrong lessons from Mamdani's very narrow victory in New York City, by the way, now think it's a free pass to say abolish the police and abolish Thanksgiving in the state of Wisconsin. Not going to end well. Going to take a wild guess. But obviously not an excuse to get complacent either, because Wisconsin, if you don't vote, this lunatic is going to become your governor. But I would point out it doesn't stop. This is basically happening everywhere, because a couple days ago, she likewise went on Fox to address a lot of the recent allegations. They're not allegations, recent evidence of this person being a radical communist, totally not CCP plant. And well, needless to say, here she goes again.
For example, you say abolish the Senate. You want ICE out of Wisconsin. I understand the abolishing ICE is something you probably still want, but you also said to defund the police 4 times. And you want to defund the police as a first step towards abolishing the police. Now, President Trump won Wisconsin twice. It is the ultimate purple state. I set my novel there for a reason. It is the place where you have to have the most appeal to both sides or to independent voters. Why shouldn't people take you at your word when you say that you want to defund the police and go towards abolishing it?
Dana, first of all, I have to say thank you so much for featuring my home state in your novel. And I
You're
believe
welcome.
that as a democratic socialist, what that means is that I would like to put working class people first over
How
mega
does defunding the
corporations
police
or
put working class people
and,
first? I mean, I think that
well,
you're about to enter into a general election, likely with Tom Tiffany, the Republican. That's not going to be an easy race. It's going to be very easy for people to put up on the board and say, you said abolish the Senate, defund the police, abolish the police. And why should they not believe that you would want to do that you would try to do that if you became governor?
I believe that people can evolve. We meet Trump voters from previous elections who now would like to vote for me, who have a sign in their yard.
So who needs
I
to
believe
evolve,
that
the voter
the
or
governor
you?
cannot defund the police, and I won't defund the police.
So
but
you
I
have
will
evolved.
invest in the things we know prevent crime, like getting guns off of our street, making sure there is victims for justice. That
Yeah, well, first of all, that's not even really true about the governor not being able to defund the police, because while it's true that most local police get their funding through local sales tax, property tax, things like that, it doesn't entirely only work that way. Wisconsin, for example, does have state police, which are controlled by, it's in the name, the state. There are other programs like shared revenue aid, mandates, state grants, things like that. So, some of that funding does trickle down. But really, secondly, and most importantly here, needless to say, that is a complete cop-out answer to sit there and pretend like, oh, well, the governor doesn't have the power to defund the police, guys, so don't worry about it. You see, the issue has never just been defunding the police. I think rather adopting the slogan of defund, or rather, to quote Francesca here much more accurately, abolish the police, even if she's not going to do that as governor because she doesn't have the full authority, does indeed reflect, however, how she's actually going to govern and what her general stance towards the issues of crime and policing actually will be. Because let's be honest, what we witnessed after 2020, yes, in many cases, the police were defunded or had to at least get their budgets cut. But let's be honest, not a lot of Democrat states or cities actually ended up following through on directly or publicly defunding the police because of BLM. Rather, though, that effect still ended up taking place. Why? Because in practice, and here's what defund the police or BLM really does mean, is they changed, first of all, the nature of policing. They pulled the police back, but most importantly, it was the changes to the criminal justice system, which is to say, all of these issues where you see repeat 10, 20, 40-time offenders who keep on getting let out of jail. They're being given deliberately light sentences for heinous crimes, oftentimes because they're either black or some type of racial minority. And this, of course, creates the recurring public safety issue of even when the police do arrest somebody, the state or the city or the judge in power, the DA, whatever it is, will not prosecute it. And obviously the governor, folks, is going to have some say in the way in which, for example, state prosecutors are chosen, as well as clemency, state pardons, systems like that. And so that's something I want you to really take notes of. The fact that she's not doubling down, or she is doubling down, I should say, on basically the same stance of defund the police. Don't sit there and think, oh, well, she doesn't have the power to do that, it'll be fine. No, that means she has a very radical, pro-criminal, pro-murder, pro-anarchy view on criminal justice. And you know for a fact, everything she touches as governor related to criminal justice will be operated through the ideology of abolish the police, which arguably is even more dangerous in itself than defunding the police. Because one thing to have police that are weakened. It's another thing, even if the police do their job, find the criminal, take them to jail, the criminal justice system will not serve justice. At that point, what power do the police actually have? So in that sense, you almost could say you have abolished the police because the police don't have power, right? They're just there to stand and pretend to be security or something like that. So do keep that in mind as well. But regardless, okay, general pattern here overall is what? As Dana Perino brings up, yes, you're running in extremely purple Wisconsin, and you don't even view any of these stances to be problematic. She's not even self-aware that, hey, maybe outside of Madison, these political positions are not popular. But folks, it doesn't even stop there. Because it's no secret she's running in a heavily white state as well, right? I'm not going to ignore that. It's Wisconsin, obviously. And I mean, first of all, white people are still the majority of the United States. But secondly, especially in a place like Wisconsin, right? That is the key electorate. So let's take a listen, for example, to about to what Francesca Hong has actually said about her electorate in itself.
I wasn't always aware of the struggles of other communities of color because for me, assimilation always kind of took over. And so I did marry. My proximity to whiteness continues, right? I'm my son is biracial. He's half white and half Korean, and I think navigating, what his identity is and how people perceive him is always at the back of my mind as well.
Yeah. So proximity to whiteness. What the heck is she talking about? What does that even mean? Well, this has actually been a theory that's been running in far left race communist circles for a very long time now, which is basically to say that, you probably have heard of this before, Asian people are labeled by hard leftists as white adjacent. The reason, of course, being that because Asian people are generally per capita wealthy, stable, low rates of crime, self-sufficient, basically just contributing, functioning members of society. Therefore, that must mean that Asians are white adjacent, because if we have this CRT theory that America's a white supremacist state that's just holding down all the brown people, and that's why the brown people are the opposite of what we just described per capita on average, clearly that must be because of racism. But then you have the so-called model minority, that one group that's not being so convenient and that kind of sits there and is like, oh, well, that's not true. Clearly that can't be the case. So they basically have just responded by labeling Asians to be white or white adjacent. And I'm using that word from now on. Whenever people ask what race am I, what ethnicity am I, I'm just going to say I have proximity to whiteness, much like Francesca Hong, as a fellow mixed Asian person who's part white. Yeah, I'm not just, biracial, whatever. I have proximity to whiteness, guys. Can you believe it? But anyways, so that's describing basically what she said about all of this, right? But notice how Francesca Hong even that poor kid, by the way, that poor son, she calls out her half-white son as proof. Oh no, I have proximity to whiteness. My disgusting half-white son. Can you believe it? Which is, of course, hilarious and kind of, again, very sad for the kid, because first of all, you are telling a vastly majority state white that whiteness is a bad thing. Again, good luck with that. Have fun in the election. But then secondly, she sits there and pretends as if it was just some total thing that was imposed on her that her son is half white. Hey, Francesca, who did you have the kid with? Who did you end up marrying or whatever you did there? Oh, you mean to tell me that much like every non-white communist representative in this country, AOC, Ilhan Omar, the whole lot of them, once again, we have another anti-white minority communist character who gets married to a white guy. Isn't that kind of funny to think about? But still, regardless, okay, just creating a lot of problems for herself. You have a politically moderate majority white state, and you've decided not to be politically moderate and decry that white people are horrible, and that, even kind of calling out your own son for the crimes that apparently you committed by marrying a white guy. It's just so utterly ridiculous. Now, here is the good news. First and foremost, even Democrats, kind of probably understanding where they are, understanding what a lunatic this person is, have not really cared that much to get behind Francesca Hong. Look at the fundraising difference here, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Tiffany already has raised about $8.7 million. That is the presumptive Republican candidate. Francesca only has $700,000. So she's going to be running into this completely broke, pretty hilarious. And as we showed you in our past video, Tom Tiffany currently leads Francesca Hong by about 3 points in the state of Wisconsin, which, first of all, obviously it goes without saying, that's still not nearly enough. That's still way too close for comfort. How is it that anyone in the state of Wisconsin would be supporting this absolute lunatic who wants to cancel Thanksgiving and abolish the police? But still, regardless, understanding that, a sizable portion of the Democrat electorate are indeed just as communist as Francesca Hong. And by the way, that Wisconsin polls do often underestimate Republicans by a lot. And it's the summertime, that sort of Republican voters typically tend to catch up in the polls a lot closer to the election. I mean, that's not a bad position. I think definitely you're seeing the proof that Francesca in many ways is an unviable candidate, but that's again why we say time and time again, this is yet another reason why you have to go out and vote. But the good news, folks, is that by and large, all of the metrics by which we can see, not only is her campaign collapsing due to just completely insane radical things she's done and said in the past, but even I don't know who is telling her to say this. I don't know what she's thinking. She's going on TV, running in the state of Wisconsin and saying, no, actually, I'm going to double down on all of those positions. Utterly ridiculous and insane. And, you know, I'm kind of looking forward to this election if that ends up being the general, because it'll be the ultimate litmus test, right? These DSA Marxist characters believe that, again, because they won in New York City and a couple of deep blue places like Seattle or whatever, that clearly gives them the mandate to, you know, actually run this stuff where it counts, where it actually matters. So, you know, by the way, the Democrat Party is both too scared and too powerless to do anything to stop it. So I guess we're going to find out. I guess we're going to find out who's right or wrong. Do the people of Wisconsin, who are overwhelmingly white and politically moderate, want someone who hates white people and, you know, has the most radical positions probably ever invented in human history? I don't know. That said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.